Hi, welcome back to another Econ Podcast with Mr. Hagan. And on this Econ Podcast, we're going to talk about how in Monopoly the demand curve is going to be separated from the marginal revenue curve. So we're going to kind of explain why that's the case, and then we'll come back and compare that to pure competition. So first of all, these numbers that we're looking at right here, these are hypothetical numbers for a monopolist, and right here is the quantity and the price. These two together essentially make up the demand curve. Okay, so we have a downward sloping demand curve. We have an inverse relationship between price and quantity. Okay, when the firm produces more, let's say 4 units, the price is going to be lower at $85, or think about it the other way. When the price is $85, consumers are going to buy 4 units of the good. When the price is $100, consumers are only going to buy 1 unit of the good. So the firm essentially can reduce production, say from 4 to 1, and in the process of doing so, they would raise the price. So that's going to cause the marginal revenue curve, the marginal revenue numbers over here, are going to separate from the price. They're going to separate from the price. Let's talk about why that would be the case. So if the firm were to produce 1 unit of the good, then they would charge a price right here of $100, and 1 times 100 gives you your total revenue, which would be $100. Okay, so that's my total revenue. Now, let's look at what happens if the firm decides to produce a second unit. So originally the firm was producing 1 unit, and they were selling it for $100. Now they're going to produce 2 units, and they're going to sell those for $95 each. The price is going to fall to $95. So what happens on the margin? What happens on the margin is the very first unit that they sold, they used to sell that first unit for $100, but now that first unit is only going to sell for $95. Okay, so by producing 2 units of the good, the price is now going to be $95 per unit. So you used to get $100 for that first unit. Now you're only going to get $95 for the first unit. In other words, on the first unit that you sell, the firm's now going to get $5 less than they did before. However, they used to not sell a second unit, and now they are going to sell a second unit. So when they sell that second unit, they're going to make an additional $95 on that second unit. So these are the 2 key numbers right here. These are the 2 key numbers. What happened here was on unit number 2, the firm added $95, but they lost, that was added $95 because they sold that second unit for $95, but they lost $5 on the first unit. That first unit used to sell for $100, and now used to sell for $100, and now it's only going to sell for $95. So they lost $5 on the first unit. And so the marginal revenue, they added $95 by selling a second unit. They lost $5 on the first one. They used to sell for $100, and now it's only going to sell for $95. So the marginal revenue is going to be $90. Okay? The marginal revenue is going to be $90. The marginal revenue, okay, so right here it is for unit number 2. The marginal revenue is going to be less than the price. Why? Because on the first unit, we added $95 on the second unit, but on the first unit, we gave up $5. We used to sell it for $100, and now it's only going to sell for $95. Okay? So we gained $95 and lost $5. All right, let's just do that one more time. Let's think about going from 2 units to 3 units. So if we go from 2 units to 3 units, so we go from 2 units to 3 units, we used to do what? We used to sell, so let's see, that second unit, unit number 2, we were selling those at $95 each. If we sell 3 units, they're only going to sell for $90 each. All right, so what do we gain from this? Well, we would gain we would gain plus 90 because unit number 3, we used to not sell a third unit. Now we will, and we'll get $90 for it. Okay? So that's a plus 90. However, unit numbers 1 and 2, they both used to sell. Unit 1, when we were producing 2 units of the good, unit number 1 was selling for $95. Now it's only going to sell for $90. Okay, so that's going to be a loss of $5. And also that was unit number 1. Also, unit number 2 used to sell for $95, and now it's only going to sell for $90. So they're going to lose $5 on that unit as well. So those 2 units, unit 1 and unit 2, both used to sell for $95. Now they're going to sell for $90. You lost $5 on both of those. And so that's going to be minus 10. Okay? So we added $90 on that third unit, but we lost $5 on the first and $5 on the second. So we lost $10. That gives me a marginal revenue of $80. Right there it is. Marginal revenue below the price. Okay? And notice this. The greater the level of production, the greater the difference between the marginal revenue and the marginal price. And the price. Why? Because the greater your production, the more previous units there are on which you have to lower the price. And of course, the other way to think about this is, obviously you can just calculate the marginal revenue off of the total revenue numbers and verify that what I'm saying is true, right? So the total revenue went from 100 to 190. That was a marginal revenue of 90. For unit number 3, it went from 190 to 270. There's your marginal revenue of 80 and so forth. So, you can check it and verify it that way. But the key to this concept, the key to the big idea here is that when a company increases production, okay, they add revenue by selling those new units. Okay, they gain this extra money from selling that additional unit, but they have to lower the price on all the previous units. Okay, that's what causes marginal revenue to separate from the price. Okay, so let's just take a quick look at what this then looks like on the graphs. So what's going to happen on the graphs is, so you have monopolist over here on the left. This is the monopoly graph, and this is a graph of a company in pure competition. And so what's the difference between these? The difference is that in pure competition, the demand curve, which is perfectly elastic for the purely competitive firm, the demand curve is equal to marginal revenue, which is equal to price, and equal to average revenue. Okay, so in a purely competitive firm, they face the perfectly elastic demand curve for their good, and therefore price will be exactly equal to the marginal revenue, right? And we can see it up here. It's not just price equal to marginal revenue. Everything, demand, marginal revenue, price, average revenue are all the same. However, for the monopolist, they face the market demand curve, which is downward sloping. That's going to change everything, and that's going to separate the price from the marginal revenue. In fact, it's going to separate marginal revenue from everything else. Marginal revenue is going to separate from demand, it's going to separate from average revenue, and it's going to separate from the price. And notice this, we're focusing on price and marginal revenue right now, but it's also separating from demand and average revenue. But also notice this that I talked about on the previous slide, and that is the greater the level of the production by the firm. That means as we move to the right on the horizontal axis, the greater the increase in production, the greater the difference between the price and the marginal revenue. Okay, the more we increase production, the greater will be this vertical distance between price and marginal revenue. That's just generally true for the monopolist. So this is a big idea. This is a big distinction in microeconomics, the distinction between the monopolist and the purely competitive firm. This has been Mr. Hagan on another Econ podcast. Thanks for joining me, and we'll see you on the next Econ podcast.